So we got 3. I haven't heard anything from Charity, so I hope she remembers when our meeting is.
I think she's, I thought a couple people are out today.
Well, I only know of Debbie being gone. I didn't know Charity was out.
Charity is out of town and cannot make the meeting. She's seeing her parents that she hasn't seen since pre-COVID.
Okay.
Really certain Greg will be joining us.
Yeah, Greg should be. Haven't heard from Victoria, so.
Okay, Michael.
Oh, there's Greg. Hi, Greg.
Howdy.
We have Mary coming tonight. Does anyone know?
I know nothing. Well, give Victoria a few more minutes to get a quorum, but if she doesn't show up, I guess we can still go ahead, just can't vote on anything, right?
With 7 members, it's what? You have to have half plus 1. So is 4 a quorum or is 5?
There's 7 of us in the group, so if we want to vote, we gotta have 4. Not that we have anything to vote on tonight, but who knows? So there's 4 of us actually, so Jerry. So we got 4 of us. We should probably go ahead and start.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll hit record then.
Okay, go ahead and record.
We're recording.
Recording in progress. Okay, well, welcome to the St. Patty's Day version of the West Linn Sustainability Advisory Board monthly meeting. It is 6:03 and call the meeting to order. And let's go around. So Terrence Shoemaker's here, Jerry Gabrielatos, Mike Carlson, Cambria, Gregory Smith, Darren Weiss is a guest, and Victoria Meyer just signed in. Welcome, Victoria.
Hey, Victoria.
Victoria.
Okay, first item of business, minutes from the February meeting. Does anybody have any additions, corrections to those minutes? Nothing? So do I hear a motion to approve February minutes?
I so move that we approve the February minutes.
Greg moves. Any second?
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion? Obviously none. So I'll approve the minutes. Yay. Looks like minutes get approved. Very good. Moving on. Public comment. We don't have any guests, but we do have Darren, who is quite the guest, but he doesn't need to talk right yet, right, Darren? Okay.
That's correct. Thanks.
All right. Well, let's do some check-ins, and looking at my screen, let's start with Greg.
I just got back from a day-long trip out to the forest that a friend owns out close to Gaston, and he brought together a group of people to be guinea pigs for a presentation that he's pulling together for policymakers and folks at the state level, and then folks in the timber industry, citizens, forestry students about climate smart forestry, which was really interesting. So I think that he would be a good person to bring in just to do one of our education sessions potentially in the fall. And he didn't express any objections to that when I mentioned it as a possibility. But it was a cold but really interesting day.
Great.
What was his name again?
Peter Hayes.
And who is he with?
Well, they own their own forest called Hyla Woods, and he was on the state forestry board for a number of years, kind of representing the sustainable forestry position.
Okay, great. Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome.
Mike.
Let's see. Just got our first batch of seeds planted in the spring garden, so excited to see those come up. Just pruned my fruit trees. Can't say that I really know what I'm doing, but I'm following the basic rules and hoping for the best on those. And class is going well. I just registered for my summer term, so I'll be taking a renewable energy technologies course and I guess the foundation course. So I'm excited to get rolling on those in May.
And
Great.
Mike, do you go back to Pennsylvania ever to meet with folks in your cohort?
There is no requirement, as far as I understand it. This is all online. This is through the World Campus, as they call it, which I think is their online school for students around the world.
Sure. Neat.
But we may do that anyway. I've got family over there, so we're over there. We may take a trip up to State College and have a look around.
Great.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. Jerry.
I'm doing well. Last time I was at the meeting, I had COVID. I'm COVID free now.
That's good.
So I'm excited by that. And that's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. It's good to hear that. Kim.
Okay, the most recent check-in is I stopped at the historic Willamette St. Patrick's Day market, and I was really encouraged by, I mean, it's local vendors, but just more and more how low impact the packaging is. I mean, yeah, I grabbed a couple things that fit in my pockets, but it wasn't a bunch of plastic packaging or big bags. So, locally made things, low packaging, that stuff makes me happy. So that's the happy note. And there was little leprechaun dudes there with beards. They were probably 8 years old, but that was, it's going on till 8 in case you need corned beef and cabbage. And then yesterday, and if you're interested, I can send this to the group. We're part of Clean Cities Coalition, and I get the newsletter with the coalition, and they just recently released something with the EPA talking about some of the different grants and programs coming on board. And one of them that stood out was the electric school bus. The infrastructure package really has a lot of funding towards sustainability. So I sent that to the Westland Wilsonville School District last night so that they could get in on that. And I also shared with them, that let's leverage the opportunity because it is a city, it meets the city sustainability goals. And last week when we had our guest speaker, I'm trying to think of what her name was at PGE, Shauna
Brownstein.
I mean, first thing she talked about was first student was talking to PGE about electrifying buses. And then if you remember later in her discussion, she was talking about peak load sharing so that when you have smart management on the grid, things like a school bus can go back and charge itself or feed back into the grid. So I think those things are really important for our sustainability, our resiliency goals as well. So I get excited about that stuff. And I got to drive an electric school bus at a ride and drive a couple years ago, and it was a kick in the pants. So it's not just like good for the planet, but if it might help them recruit bus drivers, it's a little more, responsive and kind of cool. So.
Okay, great. That's good news. Thanks, Kim. I appreciate you sending that information to the Westland Wilsonville School District. That's excellent. Victoria.
You're making me think of the old days when I used to drive school bus. I was pretty interested that Senator Merkley sent me an email talking about he was happy with the work that had been done saving the post office, was still in there fighting for the fleet to be electric. So I hope he is able to have some success with that. It really ought to be electric, the whole post office fleet.
I will send that to the group because there was something on there with the heavy fleets. So I'll send that to everyone. You can, I mean, there's like 11 pages in there, but if you want to share that to Victoria, if he said he wants to electrify the fleet, we can help him find some money.
All right. So yeah, go girl. Yeah, I got my peas planted, which is always a happiness. I save them from year to year from the previous peas. And this last 2-3 weeks, we have been able to charge our electric car from the solar panels on the roof, or at least some of it on the sunnier days. So feeling encouraged about that.
Excellent. Great. Looks like I'm up. So with this peas theme, I would mention that our snap peas are up and the squirrels have not yet discovered them. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Oh,
Other than that, as far as a check-in, I just wanted to convey my feelings about this group because I truly do believe that we have a very strong group right now. And what with the goals that we have set up and the goals that are going to be addressed today, I think the time is ripe for us to stick to our guns and press the city on seriously working on the goals that we've established, because I think we've got a really good crew. I think we are being noticed. And I think especially in light of April's presentation that Greg is going to do and the work he's done on that, I think we are on the precipice of getting good things done with the city. And while I'm talking about Greg's presentation, unfortunately, I won't be here, but I looked at it and I worked with Greg on it. He's also publishing an article. I hope it gets in the tidings before his presentation. And Jerry, this is also oriented to you. I firmly believe that we should get as many council members to attend Greg's session in April as possible, because it's on neighborhood resilience teams. It ties in with Map Your Neighborhood. It ties in with emergency management system, and hopefully the new employee who's going to be directing that will get in tune with that whole process. So I think we're on the cusp of getting things done, and we cannot let our foot off the accelerator as a group, because we got a strong group now and really in great admiration of this talent we've got on this group. So that's it for me. Okay.
Before you move on, since I'm taking notes, what date is Greg's presentation again?
April 12th.
I see Jerry putting it right on his calendar right now.
Is there an email that you sent about it, Greg, that I might have missed, or?
I haven't sent an email.
This is-
It's on the general, I think the overall list of presentations, but I
It's
haven't
on
sent
our
it.
website on the Sustainability Education Series page. It's been there for a while. We hashed this out at the last meeting. It's on the schedule. So
Okay.
I think it's going to be just a pump primer session for greater things to come. I'm hoping. Okay. Well, yeah, Mike.
Just a quick question while we're on the topic of Greg's presentation next month. Is there a way for the city to reach out specifically to the neighborhood association, the various neighborhood association heads, to encourage them to attend as well? I think they could be valuable attendees.
Like, I've talked to the president of the neighborhood association, and I'm scheduled to be at their meeting in May, but I haven't kind of specifically requested that neighborhood association presidents attend, but I could certainly do that. So I've already emailed him already, and I could send him a copy of the presentation so he could kind of know what he was going to be inviting others to attend. So I'll take care of that.
Okay, there's an action item. So Greg is going to notify the neighborhood association presidents. Kim, if you're taking notes. Great, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Good point, Mike. Okay, any other comments on that before we move on? Okay, just a short one here. The item 5, the SAB and city communications. This is a concern of mine because Kim and I made a presentation to City Council in December, and it was approved by City Council for the city manager to find staff and time to work on our proposal of our goals. And we heard nothing, and we have heard nothing until, and I had requested of Darren a week or so ago, and I asked Jerry what's become of it, and then I got an email from Darren that was obviously sent to Brenda Cruz on January 24th, stating some initial findings that he had, and I hope he's going to address that, I'm sure. But my concern is that was sent January 24th, and as far as I know, nobody on the SAB knew about this. And that's a great concern of mine, because we spent a lot of time working up these goals. We worked up a presentation for City Council, it was approved, and it fell off the edge of the earth, and we never heard anything, yet something was being done, and something was sent January 24th. And here, just day before yesterday, I got the email. So, and I don't know if it was a lapse because of Brenna moving on or what, but I really do strongly feel if the SAB is working as hard as they are and are doing this work, which is extremely important, that there needs to be lines of communication, open and clear and timely, based on what we are doing. Because if we don't get communication back on the work we put in, what does that make us feel like? I know what it makes me feel like. So communication is extremely important. We're doing important work here, and I'm not sure that everybody in the city realizes this, because the lack of communication indicates to me we're low on the totem pole. That's just my personal feeling. I'm not speaking for the group. So that's what I wanted to say about item 5. Any comments?
And before you respond, Jerry and Darren, one thing I would like to add is that I agree with Terry that we really have a wonderful group. We've got a deep bench ready to go to work. And one of the things that I see, especially talking about grant funding coming out, is we've been pushing to get this work done so that we are in line when that funding comes. Because by the time you see a grant application, you know, like some of the stuff I was looking at, there was one that I saw that I know that we could qualify for as a city, but it has to be in by the end of March. That can't happen if you just start talking about it. And, you know, it's kind of like RFPs. If by the time you see it, it's too late to get your information to get that stuff in. So, you know, not just engaging our group, but also so that we can help the city get funding to advance the goals that everyone agrees on, so that we all win.
Great. Okay. I added what we used to have in this group a few years ago were action items, and that kind of fallen by the wayside. So I put them in last time. So just to review these, see if we got any comments. Debbie did some good work with the composting and sent that to the SAB members. So that's good. And we should probably look at that, discussing that in detail, either next meeting or in the near future. And Jerry, item B, I guess, is that going to be something that you and Darren will talk about coming up next?
Darren's here to talk about the CDC.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, this-
goal 1 there. We'll say that our Park and Rec Director, Ken Warner, reached out to Lake Oswego to find out how their, I shouldn't say conversion, but their work with lawn maintenance equipment is going. Let me find that email real fast. In general, the battery operated equipment tends to wear out a little bit quicker than gas powered things, as you can imagine. And that's just sort of where they are. And then I saw that Portland is working on a slow conversion as well. Reached out to a member of their staff, but didn't hear back. I will say that the lawn maintenance equipment in general is something that's been discussed at our council meetings. Well, let me rephrase. It was discussed at one council meeting. We brought it up at goal setting. I think there's just a general feeling that the the noise is annoying for everybody, and then you throw on the and add the environmental impact that it could have to migrating, and there's an impetus among our council to start migrating toward electric or battery-powered lawn maintenance equipment, and I think we can start moving toward that. Would like to do a little bit more research. And I mentioned last time our fleet. We already have 2 electric vehicles, and I know there are plans to purchase more. And then Kim, the Columbia, what is the name of the group that you're very familiar with that I'm forgetting the name of?
It's okay, it's long. CWCCCCC something. Columbia Willamette Clean Cities Coalition.
That's exactly right. So there's some work that they've asked us to do. I'm pulling up those emails too, sorry. That has to do with the emissions that our fleet has, and I think that is sort of a nudge toward the continued migration to electric vehicles and electrification of our fleet. That's my update.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Jerry.
I've got a question just about electrical lawn maintenance tools.
Yeah.
We had an electric lawnmower for a number of years, but ended up kind of going back to gas powered, in part because the electric lawnmower just didn't have the strength to cut lawn in the spring, and it worked great summer and fall, but spring was virtually impossible. And so I'm just curious about like whether the technology has improved from anybody's knowledge base.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes,
has,
it
okay,
has.
good.
And I know this is nerdy, but the Columbia Willamette Clean Cities, they participated with I can't even think of the name of the group, but they had it out of PIR last fall, and it was for the ops and maintenance people. So you got to not just box trucks for delivery, but they had the super cool golf carts that a lot of parks and rec use for maintenance or schools. And then they did have that lawn mowing equipment. Some of the stuff was super cool. I don't know what the price point was, but from a technology standpoint, it's advancing rapidly. It just, but it's also, do you get one thing, or do you get the beefy mower that has all the attachments, which might cost more money up front, but then is lower maintenance and lasts longer, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of technology advances, but you almost have to go to one of those events with your jaw open and play with the stuff.
PGE is coordinating a day in which people can swap their gas-powered equipment for electric equipment. There's a name of this called the Pge Tool Exchange. They're working with Lake Oswego and Wilsonville, but West Linn will be invited to participate on that. It's kind of cool. Has anybody heard of this before?
Yeah. They spoke about it at our last meeting.
Yeah.
Conrad did.
So I had COVID during the last meeting, so wasn't feeling 100%. But they'll let us details on the date, and we can share it with the SAB and go from there.
Okay. Very good. Next item, Michael and speaker for October Fall Food Preservation.
I have not tried to chase somebody down quite yet.
Okay.
I figured maybe a little bit too early to try to arrange something like that. People's availability may not be very clear 7 months out. So I thought I would wait until maybe June or so to start looking around for somebody who might be able to provide that for us. Figured my first point of contact would be the master gardeners, though.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah, there is time. There's still time. Charity's not here, so we can't get a report on the November session.
No.
Victoria, sorry.
Another idea for Michael would be the Oregon State Extension Service.
Yeah.
They do a lot of food preservation stuff.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Victoria. And Kim and I were going to get speakers for the May Electric Future, and Cal Conrad, who spoke with us last time about the Tool Exchange program, is agreed to speak. And I think Kim, was it Graham from?
I'm talking to Michael Graham with CWCCC that, you know, that Jerry's probably familiar with. And here's the thing, I do want to ask the group on the electric future. It's really a big topic. We can do a panel. We can focus on residential. We could have it be residential / business. What with the, it's a cornucopia of super nerdy topics that are kind of cool. So where would you like to see the focus of it be? Because I've got like some really great speakers that they can bring. They'll deliver us whoever we want. I mean, they work with the US Department of Energy, but what kind of things would you like to focus on for this hour?
What are some of the possibilities, Kim?
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Well, I mean, you've got, you know, you've got the electric car. I mean, Victoria eloquently shared her frustration of trying to drive cross country and charging. Talking about infrastructure. We could, you know, there's work vehicles, there's electrification of business vehicles. You know, I mean, we've got a lot of small businesses around here. Hydrogen's really coming on board in a big way. We don't have the distribution yet, but last year at a conference, TriMet was talking about how to produce it locally with, what do you call it, a hydrolyzer? This sounds like my topic here. You would like the hydrogen, Mike, you know, because that's zero emissions as well, and that gives you a different kind of range. So the hydrogen could be an interesting part of the conversation, but it's also its own world.
well, I think if I'm looking at it right, this is really our first full year of doing these education seminars, and I'm kind of, and maybe I'm off the main road here, but I'm kind of thinking of these as seed seminars. They're general in nature, which will lead to other farther drilled down topics in the future coming off of these. So I was thinking that the electric future, we should not even be getting into details. There are 3 general areas that we had talked about previously. That was, we just talked about it, tools, transportation, and solar generation, like residential. Keep in mind, most of the people attending these are residences of the area. And I would think a general overview in those 3 areas to pique people's interest, not to bore them with details about hydrogen futures and all this stuff, which is valid, but still, we need to keep people's interest up so they will come to future events that will give them details about more specific things. So that was kind of my feeling about these. Like Greg's presentation in April is going to be a seed seminar. He's going to talk generally about neighborhood resilience teams, what they are, but not get into great details, because that'll open it up to future events where we can drill down and get into details. So that's just my 2 cents. Mike.
Yeah, I can see there being some value to, you know, sort of leaning into the title of the seminar itself, the electric future. You know, I don't think we necessarily need to limit it to like what is presently available to people. I think there may be some benefit to trying to generate some excitement and positive thinking about what we can do, not necessarily what's within reach at the present moment. You know, obviously it's like like Kim mentioned with the hydrolyzers, that's, you know, I can't go out and take advantage of that at this very moment, but it's exciting that people are developing that kind of technology. There's a lot that's being worked on that I think can be encouraging to people. I think if we, you know, look at the range of material that's available on the topic of sustainability, yeah, some of it's encouraging, but a lot of it is very, you know, doom and gloom, like let's avoid these bad consequences of years of inactivity on fighting climate change. But if we can focus on things that are more encouraging, that may actually give people reason to look for these things in the future and raise their likelihood of participation in them.
Any other thoughts about, like Kim asked about the nature of that presentation, the electric future? Victoria?
I would say that it would be helpful to tell people each time that we have one of these courses that we are clear that this is a seed presentation, that it's general intentionally, and that there will be more specific next year in the future.
Mhm.
So that they might be interested in coming back and not say, oh, well, they'll just do the same lecture again next year.
Oh, good idea. We should definitely do that.
I think doing so would offer us the opportunity to, pick the brains, maybe even in a small way, of the attendees to see what they were interested in these seed seminars, so that we may have a little, way of gauging what might actually be worth pursuing in future presentations as well.
Okay, any other thoughts on that? Nothing else?
I'm gonna put a note on this just for myself. If it's not too much trouble, if there's a possibility of doing a survey at registration, this can be anything. This could be one person, it could be several doing the overview. But if there's a panel where there's like, 2 or 3 at the registration, we could say, what are you most interested in? That way, by the time that speaker starts, they could focus on those aspects for the overview. If it's not too much of a pain in the butt at registration. If it's a thing, then we just go.
Are you talking about when you actually register on the
Yeah.
library site?
Yeah, because I would imagine on registration, you could say, what topics are you most interested in on this?
Oh, so that would have to be something on the library's website to ask a question when you register, right?
Right.
Okay. We'd have to find out who Cheryl Hill is kind of the administrator of that.
If you've got her contact, I'll get a hold of her.
Okay.
And if it's not a thing, then we'll have an agenda and off we go with an overview.
Okay, that's an action item for Kim, and I will get you her contact information. All righty. Great, good idea. Okay, well, there's no other discussion on that. Item 7, the SAB 2022 goals update, and that brings, drum roll please, Darren and Jerry in to talk about item 7, which are our goals that we have proposed and were accepted by City Council. So get an update from Darren and Jerry. Take it away, Darren.
Darren, I'll let you, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, thanks. All right, yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to see you. I know Terry, Kim, Victoria, and Greg from my tour as the SAB liaison for a while. So it's nice to meet you, Mike. So hopefully everyone saw my email that Terry referenced earlier. This email was based on, I had spoke with Terry and Kim back in the fall, late summer, early fall, before you made your proposal to council. And then again, I spoke with Terry and Kim prior to the council meeting in December. And these were some of the ideas that I had presented to Terry and Kim. So the goal from the council was very general in looking at CDC updates, which is the Community Development Code, which myself as the planning manager, I'm in charge of interpreting and updating. So hence the reason Jerry asked me to be in attendance tonight. So if you have the email in front of you, you can follow along. If not, I'm gonna go through it. But so your 3 categories: community electrification, resilient landscaping, and tree preservation. They all could hit on parts of the Community Development Code, but my recommendations are some of them are outside of the Community Development Code and would deal with the municipal code or even the building code. So I'll just run through this. So for the community electrification, so EV charging stations and solar panels. So again, if the focus is on getting all city facilities implementing charging stations and solar panels, that really doesn't have anything to do with the Community Development Code. That's simply a budgetary decision made by the City Council. So if the SAB is going to pursue that, you don't really need to change anything in the Community Development Code to do that. So I would say that's really not part of the goal of Community Development Code updates. The second one, which is an interesting one, and it's very timely, the requiring either charging stations or the infrastructure for charging stations for new multi-family or commercial construction, specifically for EV car charging stations to be in the parking lots. You know, we all see them around at Fred Meyer and other court or businesses. We've got them outside City Hall here. There's this project known as the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities project going on. The Department of Land Conservation and Development, which is the statewide planning organization, they are nearing the end of it. They are going to be coming out with their draft rules here at the end of the month, and they will take it through a public hearing process with the Land Conservation and Development Commission, and also the Transportation Commission, because there's a lot of transportation related items in there. One of the items in there is possible mandates for new commercial construction and new multifamily construction to provide the infrastructure, the conduits and the cabling to the parking lots, so the EV charging stations can be easily hooked up. So that's something that it looks like it's going to come out of that work, and that's why I agreed to come to the SAB in April, and I will come back in April and give you an update on what those rules say, so we can be very clear that it might be something that we do not have to address through this process. We might be required to address it. So it might be not a choice on our part, and we will have to change our code to make sure that we are following any state statute or administrative rules that come out of this process. So those were the two really closely related items under that EV charging stations and solar panels. Greg, I see your hand is up.
I guess my question is about just the infrastructure for residences. Is that part of this new potential requirement, or is that something that's different?
So my understanding is the last time I looked at the rules, they were really focused on the commercial and multifamily where there's large parking areas.
Right.
So I'm gonna get to the sort of single family residential next. So that's
Okay,
good
good.
timing. Yep. So the other component from the SAB was charging ports or solar collection infrastructure installation in single family homes. So again, that's really not a community development code item. That's a building code item, and that's where the building official and the Clackamas County building official would come into play. The city doesn't have electrical permits or electrical inspectors. We contract out with the Clackamas County to do that. So it would be a conversation. Have to be a conversation with the building official of Westland and Clackamas County to see, what that would take, how that would get implemented. Would it be allowed under state building codes? Because I believe this was talked about at the state level a few years ago, and it did not get implemented through that process. So again, that's something outside of the community development code. It's somewhat related to the community development code though, because you would have to evaluate impacts to housing, other things. So we already have an affordable housing issue here in the city of Westland, so there'd have to be some kind of evaluation about any potential impacts to making houses even less affordable. But again, not something that we would want to address through the community development code. It'd be done through the building code or the muni code, one or the other.
Oh, Darren, are you saying that this would be something to address with the county rather than the cities?
Well, no. So it would get addressed through the city, but I'm saying we would need to reach out to the county building official because they are the ones that do the electrical permitting within the city. So we'd want their input on what that would look like. And again, always researching other jurisdictions around the country that maybe have possibly integrated something like this, and not reinvent the wheel if it's already been done somewhere else. So, it's again, some research, some conversations to sort of frame where the city wants to go.
Okay.
So Darren, my question would be, with whom in the city should we speak to be able to get this process going?
So yeah, I don't know. I think that's I'm unsure exactly what you're wanting as an outcome from this conversation, but I think that's something the SAB needs to decide is what you want to start prioritizing to work on, and then come up with a plan on how to get there.
Well, I think that that's what happened. It was I identified it as something that we did want to work on, and that we need, if we can't go to the county as a kind of a strategy for implementing it, how do we begin, and whom do we work with at the city level to try to make it a reality?
Well, I think that's a conversation that Jerry and my direct supervisor, the community development director, who also supervises the building official, would need to have that conversation. But the building official would be the appropriate person to probably start the conversation with.
The building official for the city.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He knows the codes in and out. So
Who is that?
Jim Clark is the building official. But I mean, yeah. So again, I wouldn't recommend just emailing Jim Clark and asking him to do this. He's gonna say until he's directed to do it, he's not gonna do it. So yeah. So there's got to be some chain of command. We're all very busy here. We can't just drop what we're assigned to do and then start working on something else.
Understand, we're just trying to find a direction through this. So
Okay.
if we wanted to pursue this, which I'm sure we do because we brought it up as a goal, Jerry, would our first step be to you, or do we have to make another proposal to city council?
No, I'd be happy to talk to John, Darren, and I think John and I could figure something out there.
I think we've got if I'm not mistaken, we've got a pretty long list, right, Darren, to get through. So if you can all kind of like keep a little score sheet as Darren's going off the topics that he's covering, so that you can kind of have a running number of what your priority is, so that when he's done, whether we do it at this meeting or the next meeting, so we can prioritize what we're working on. Because it's going to take you a minute to get through everything, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'll go through it as quickly as I can. I know you've got a busy agenda here.
Good.
Yeah. So that's a great idea, Kim. Thank you for that.
Come on.
All right. So again, that's the requirements in new single family construction. So then the resilient landscaping. So again, my recommendation would be that it doesn't get integrated into community development code, because there's really no enforcement action on something like this, right? If someone builds a subdivision, they sell the lots or they build the houses, and then the people move into the houses and install their landscaping. And by that point, planning is completely out of the picture, right? So it would have to be some kind of mechanism set up that if someone installed plants that didn't meet, whatever, if we came up with a list of plants that were acceptable within the community, whether the city would want to go down that route. So my recommendation is, so if you wanted to do like example projects and start with city properties, again, that's simply, that has nothing to do with the community development code. That would just be, again, prioritizing and budgeting through either parks, administration, public works, whoever has funding and management of these different areas. Kim and Terry and I talked about, I'm not familiar with the parks around West Linn, so one might already exist, a demonstration planting of a native garden. And if it doesn't, that's something you could start with. Find some funding and plant a native garden in a park, and then point people to that through an information campaign about how it saves water, how it will save you money, and go down and look at the demonstration planting at such and such park. Again, for private property, so that's targeting city properties. Private properties, again, I think a public information campaign is probably the easiest route to go. That would not task staff with driving around the community, seeing if people installed native planting or not. Again, using that demonstration planting, if there is one, or if not, if one were installed. And then again, I believe I know Terry here for sure. When the backyard habitat program came through and the SAB recommended the council fund them, and the council has now funded them for 4 straight years. They have a lot of good information. Susie is a great person to work with. So maybe just, tying the backyard habitat program into some kind of public information campaign. I'm sure there's a ton of other nonprofit organizations that have readily accessible materials doing social media blasts about just with links to organizations that you can get information from. Would maybe be the easiest route to go to get something kicked off. And then the third component of that was the water utility rates. And again, that has nothing to do with the Community Development Code. That would be a Utility Advisory Board / Public Works discussion. And then finally, the last one, the tree preservation. So we've heard this a lot from the community about wanting to change the tree code. I believe I talked to Kim and Terry about this. So in this would be, well, it could be both a Community Development Code and a municipal code. Community Development Code regulates removal of trees through the development process. The municipal code regulates the removal of trees outside of the development process. So it'd be whichever one you wanted to target, but most people, target when there's a new subdivision that goes in and a lot of trees get cut down. So the State of Oregon Land Use Planning Program has what's known as Goal 5. So to do any kind of resource protection, you have to go through this Goal 5 process. So this isn't something that we could just change the code and 2 months later it'd be in effect. It would be a multi-year planning process. When I was in the city of Tigard, we went through this process, and it took us about 3 years in total to come up with an urban forestry strategy, an urban forestry strategic plan, and then go through a code amendment process in the Goal 5 process to get it implemented. So if it's something that the council wants planning to work on, we'd have to get it on the docket, get it prioritized, get it funded, and then work on it as it falls into place, because we've got a number of other docket projects we're working on right now. So that's my that's my quick feedback to you on the on your goals, specifically related to the CDC amendments. And again, so I think hitting some of the low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better term, but like public information campaigns, starting on looking at, does the city have budgeting to install charging stations at every city-owned property? Is there a resilient landscaping garden in any of the parks, or if not, could one be installed pretty easily with funding that's available? Do it this spring and then have it ready for the summer. So with that, I'll be quiet and let you talk.
Don't be quiet yet. I have a clarifying question. So I apologize to the group. It's a can of worms, but maybe not a can of worms. Resilient landscaping. This is really easy if we just focus on native planting. I mean, it's a pretty short, it's not there's a lot of native plants, but it's a fairly short list if you just focus on native planting. Those things, are usually low water, good habitat, all the things, not invasive. My homeowner's insurance this last year went up $200. It never goes up that much in a year because of the wildfires. And I've talked to my neighbors and other people's homeowners insurance because it scorched the back of our necks last year. We were at a level 2, and I know Barrington Heights did a fire landscaping. So I'm hearing 3 potential things, and maybe we just focus on one. When you get into fire landscaping, you're like cutting out the underbrush, things that can burn. They might be native. And then when you get into habitat plantings, you're leaving all the things there. You're like, I'm fighting a lifetime of cleaning up my yard in the fall, of leaving them there for the bugs. Well, that's also fuel. So depending if you're focusing on native or if you're focusing on low water or creatures, because the more development we have, the less places that, animals have to hide and all the things, in flora and fauna. And if we're talking about fire, that's a tiny little landscaping with no underbrush. So you know, when we talk about resilient landscaping, the simplest would be to focus on native, because that would address water and probably encompass most things. How does the group feel about this as far as, I mean, and Darren, maybe you can answer this. I mean, do you see them from a planning aspect of distinctly different?
So could you repeat what you're asking me about being distinctly different? I'm sorry.
Distinctly different native, just if we're just focused on native of, if, like that's backyard habitat certification, did you use native plants to the area? Which will help, you know, save water without trying too hard. If we focus on fire resiliency, that's taking a lot of things out. If we focus on low water, I mean, low water is already covered in native, but if we focus on habitat, especially from a planning aspect, if you're looking at wildlife corridors of where animals and creatures can go, then that involves leaving underbrush and things.
Yeah, so I'm by no means an expert in this, but so the community development code does actually for what we call water resource areas and habitat and our habitat areas does require mitigation and rehabilitation of disturbed areas with native plantings. So you're correct. So in those corridors, you are encouraging the growth of native vegetation in order to filter pollutants and all the other aspects of the benefits of having wetlands and buffers to filter out and capture stormwater and all of those good things. So talking about the wildfire, so I did just get an email a couple days ago. So DLCD that I talked about, that's doing the climate friendly equitable communities work. They are also now starting up a discussion around the state about wildfire planning. So that's another thing that, depending on what comes out of that, it could be something that the city ends up having to implement. It looks like they're just getting started though, so I imagine that would be a couple-year process to get to an outcome. So I really don't have a good answer for you, Kim.
No, that helped. And
Yeah.
Victoria's got a question, and I see Greg had one too.
It's a comment about this hugely disparate kinds of things to plant for fire or for water. And one idea I'm just going to throw out is that if you want to plant for fire and have regulations for that, it could be on the perimeters of the city to protect from fires coming into the city, and have corridors for wildlife within the city. It's a thought that needs a lot more work and discussion, but it doesn't have to be the same for everywhere.
I guess my question was, from what you said earlier, the CDCs really don't involve plantings on private property anyway. Is that correct? So landscaping is kind of outside the responsibilities or the kind of regulations tied in to the CDCs.
That's correct. Outside of what we call water resource areas.
Okay.
Or habitat friendly areas.
And-
Yeah, so we do require the native landscaping for the restorations and rehabilitation in those areas. But yeah, if someone builds a new commercial building, they're required under our code to do 20%. I believe it's 20% coverage of the site with landscaping. So we could make that requirement to be native landscaping. But the you know, we could require their landscape architect to sign off that everything was native, because we don't have any expertise on staff to go out there and say yes or no it is or isn't. But then the problem then becomes, after that, you know, the plants die and they get replaced by non-native plants, and so there's really no enforcement mechanism is the key. Single family homes would really be problematic. Yeah.
Okay, I think as far as the resilient landscaping goes, I think Darren, you mentioned For private properties, the public information campaign using the Resources of Backyard Habitat Certification Program, there's potential in that of doing some outreach and doing some information packets for new residents and stuff like that. That could be looked at. So that is kind of low-hanging fruit there, but I think the big one, and one, the number 3, the tree code update, I think probably in April, when we come back and review this, I would really like to see how we can get the wheels in motion. If this is going to be a multi-year process to get something like that implemented, I personally would like to know, when we meet next time, how do we get that started while in the meantime we're still working on some of these other things. So you don't have to answer that now, but if that's an involved process, it's something I think we should start when we can and get a direction.
Yeah, so I'll give you my quick answer to that. Planning, we work under what's known as the planning docket.
Right.
So the council reviews the planning docket yearly, places projects on the planning docket, prioritizes them. Currently, I believe we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6 prioritized planning projects on the docket. Hopefully 2 of them will drop off this year, but the other 4 are still very, very large projects. So again, it would take a commitment from council to prioritize it and fund it would be the key to getting it moving. We just don't have the staff capacity to actually do this work, nor the expertise.
Sure.
A couple of questions. First is, when is the timing of the docket determined in terms of like what is a priority? And the second question is, do you draw upon the work of other cities? So, for example, I just learned today that Milwaukee has come up with a new tree code for its urban forest that is, really sophisticated. And just wondering, like, is there any reason that West Linn could not utilize that as a means for determining its own code?
So first of all, the city council typically makes updates to the docket at a joint meeting with the planning commission, and there's one scheduled for April the 4th, I believe. Yep, April the 4th. So the docket will be discussed there. Secondly, so yeah, that's good information, Greg. A former colleague of mine at the city of Tigard, who was the arborist there at the time I was there, and he led the city of Tigard's code update I just talked about that took like 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
He was contracted by the city of Milwaukee, and he was the one that managed, or was the
Yeah.
consultant that managed that project. So yeah, we could just try to mirror that, but it's typically in the planning world, you want to do a public outreach campaign to make sure that you're getting the input from the community on what they actually want.
Yeah.
So we would still need funding and a consultant to help us get through that process.
So
As we're looking at all these things, Darren, like on the trees specifically, is this something we can put on simmer and get it started? Or just see what I hear you loud and clear that there's not enough staff time, and you just looked at your schedule on the wall and it looked really big. But is it something that can be started on simmer so that by next year, unless council's like, hey, let's go for this. So at least it just doesn't have to wait another year to be part of a docket while we work on other stuff.
So I'll just be straightforward. No, until it gets put on the docket, prioritized and funded, we will not work on it.
Okay, thank you. I'm so glad you're here.
So to tag along with that, Darren, not to beat a dead horse, but we're very serious about this. We want to get started somehow. To prime that pumper to get on the council radar, would it be worth our while to send something, a little mini proposal to the council prior to the April 4th meeting, saying that this is an item that we would like for you to begin to consider because it is one of our primary goals?
Yes.
It would?
Yeah.
Okay. So a very short little Got that down, Kim?
And you can send that directly to the council.
Directly to the council? Okay, very good. Do it. Thank you. That's what we needed. All right. Well, there's been illuminating. Anybody else have any questions for Mike?
I did want to just like take one step back from this conversation and observe that many of the recommendations that the SAB made regarding the CDC turned out not to be relevant to the CDC in some respects. And I know that I seem to remember there being some indication that we might do like another round of recommendations. And I think that it could be really beneficial to us as the SAB to have yourself or some other staff member to help us in that brainstorming process so that we don't issue further recommendations that turn out to be non-starters.
Appropriate, yeah.
Yeah, so my personal opinion is I think the SAB has done a fantastic job of flushing out what you would like to see. The goal was very broad and just naming the CDC, but it really is the CDC, the municipal code, and any other programs or processes that the city has. It was just, the goal was specific to the CDC, but I think what you've come up with is relevant to the discussion, even if it doesn't neatly fit into the community development code. It could be done through the muni code or just simple programming through the city's budgeting process. So, but yeah, anytime Jerry would like to invite me back for the discussion. Again, I'll be here next month, so if you want to add that to the agenda to maybe have a 10-minute flush out process, I'm happy to help.
Great. Yeah, well, I think what's important, thanks for bringing that up, Mike, is that we thrashed out our goals, and it was beyond our knowledge as a group as to what documents, what rules, what regulations within the city those goals would be affected by. So, and it really helps, Darren, for you to have gone through and said, okay, well, this is not covered in the CDC, but it is taken care of elsewhere. Well, we need to know that, but our goals still stand. That's what I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you, like I said, I think you've done it as a planning process. You've done it the correct way, right? You identify your goals and then you start working backwards to how we're going to get to that goal. Now we've sort of established like which target you need to hit. CDC on some things, public information on others, municipal code on others. So, yeah, I think you're on the you're going down the right track. Now you just have to keep diving in a little deeper each time.
Great. Well, once again, I really appreciate your time, Darren, and thanks for clarifying those for us. Victoria, you're muted.
Not a question, just thank you, Darren, for spending the time helping us clear this and that you're supportive of how we put it together. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a question in terms of, before making a presentation to the city council about the change in the CDCs, is there a way that could have been caught prior? Like just in terms of process, who might have reviewed the recommendations at a point where we would have known earlier on which kinds of items were appropriate for CDC revisions and which wouldn't be? So would it have made sense to get in touch with you like earlier on in the process?
Darren, I think. Oh, sorry. Please.
Oh, I was just gonna say no. I think like I just said. I think what you've done is probably the correct way to go about it. You flushed out your ideas. You didn't necessarily know whether it was CDC or not, but now we all know what targets you want to hit and where you want to go. So, it might not be a code amendment through the planning department, but it could just be something that Jerry takes care of in his role as the city manager and delegates that task to other folks. So.
Okay. Very good. Any final questions before we move on? Okay. Once again, Darren, appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, looking at item 7, I think we've covered everything except the city facilities energy audit. Where does that stand right now? Anybody care to comment?
I contacted PGE about having the audits done. We have the data. The data's not that interesting. It's just it's an annual. The data was gathered on an annual basis. Not surprisingly, in 2020, energy use at all of our facilities dropped because of COVID. So I've reached out to PGE about having an audit done in each of our buildings and finding out if there's additional things that we can do to reduce our energy consumption. Yeah.
I did want to just highlight that my understanding was the original intent of the audit was to establish a baseline for energy use so that goals for energy reduction could be set against that baseline.
So we've got the data.
Yeah, that's my understanding. You know, whether or not we, agree that maybe the past, I think there were 3 years that were included in what Brenda had presented to us, and whether that is, shall we say, representative is probably another matter. But it is a baseline of sorts. We could just, look at that as a starting point, and then ask that energy reduction goals be set against those. I'd certainly be interested in what PGE has to say about energy savings with respect to the kind of audit that they would perform. But as it sounds like the audit, in the sense that it was originally envisioned, may largely be taken care of at this point.
Well, and you're spot on, Michael, with that baseline, because that's what, if you're applying for grants, you need that data. Yeah. If somebody's going to say, hey, we're going to invest in you, or the Oregon Energy Trust, they're like, oh, look, you saved this percentage from 2019 or whatever. You're spot on with that baseline, so that we can qualify for things or have something to compare it to.
Is there, Kim, you sound like you're, a little bit more familiar with this grant application process. Is there any need for the city to step in and, make some sort of official pronouncement or something that says that this is what we're setting our goals against? This 3-year period is our baseline. We consume this much energy and water, just to create some sort of record of that, so that the grant application process can point to those things.
I'm not talking about any particular grant. It's just whenever I've heard presentations on who's been awarded a grant, they love numbers and data. It's like, here's where we were, and we just saved it. We had a 200%, reduction. I mean, not 200%, but significant savings, and you can monetize that savings if you have where you were. So Jerry's right in the sense of, it's great that PGE is like, here's where you can save. But as we're making our goals, how do we know what that percentage was, or what kind of difference it made if we don't know where we were?
And also, I'm wondering, once we have this baseline information, then whose decision is it within different departments, different buildings, as to what type of improvements are implemented?
I would rely on the directors in those buildings, but I mean, this is all about saving money too, so I don't know why they would be resistant to it. I've never had an energy audit done through PGE before. I don't know what gets returned, but happy to find out and start working on that.
And this would be a direction that would come from you, Jerry, to the different directors, that, okay, we've got this baseline audit, and now you need to look at ways that we can reduce consumption, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay. Victoria?
If PGE is doing the audit, then it looks to me like the assumption is made that the only energy that's being audited is electric. What about use of gas or whatever else the city uses to heat buildings?
I'll have to find out where we are on that. I don't know if Brenna started that or what happened. Okay. Greg, I saw your hand up too.
Yeah, Greg, sorry.
Oh, I guess my question was just with regard to the fact that making improvements in terms of conserving more energy can, at least occasionally, involve expenses with regard to changing lighting fixtures, et cetera, or adding new temperature thermometers. And so So I guess if the building directors are responsible for that, do they have control over the budgetary issues, or is that something that needs to go through the city council?
Well, I mean, it all ends up back on my desk in some fashion. So, remember too that now that I'm sort of thinking out loud, we completed the Leaders in Sustainability program for a bunch of our buildings. I'm not, I'd be curious as to how much other low-hanging fruit out there can be plucked. The budgets for each building are sort of put together in tandem with the director and facilities managers. They'll help us with things in each building. But I mean, I inevitably approve every budget before it goes to council and before it's presented. Does that answer your question?
What if the improvements are going to cost more than normally allocated to the building? If there are improvements, it's going to be like additional expenses.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you flatly that we anticipate a budget deficit in 4 years. So there's other parts about putting together a $136 million biennial budget that we start thinking about over the year prior. I don't have an answer for you, but I mean, it's a complicated process that takes about a year to put together.
Okay.
Darren, you have your hand up.
There's a digital hand there.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to say, I don't remember if Terry and Kim were on the SAB at the time when the OIT students did their
Yes.
report that was presented to the council.
Yep, was
I
there?
dig that up and distribute it to the SAB again. There was a lot of good information in there.
Yep, and that was related to all the parks facilities.
Yeah, it did make recommendations on again, I'll use the term low-hanging fruit, changing out light bulbs and stuff in order to save money in the short term, and then the longer term going to solar and what that would entail. But anyhow,
Yeah,
it was a good report. Yeah,
interesting to see that and see how much was implemented and how much is still out there to be done.
Didn't Greg work on that?
Yes, I did, and that's partly the reason for my question, because there were really good recommendations, but as far as I could tell, very little was implemented. And so, and particularly the items that cost money. And so that's where the budgeting issue, I think, becomes an important one, because if there isn't an orientation on the part of the council to actually move in that direction, then, and if there isn't like an emphasis in city staff to do so, then I think those recommendations just go into the ether. And it's that I'd really like to see changed. That good recommendations not be lost. But that seems to be like what oftentimes happens with the SAB recommendations, is that they go into the ether.
Yeah, because specifically a lot of those recommendations may have an initial investment up front, but then down the road, there are the savings to the city. But it's that initial investment that could hurt.
Which is helpful if you know where you are. So if you're like,
Exactly.
okay, it cost us X amount of dollars for electricity in 2019 or 18, and if you spend this amount of money, then you can figure out what that payoff period is between the reduction and what your payoff is for your cost. I think that's important for anything. Is what's your payoff time frame, right?
Okay, we should probably carry this over to the next meeting. Because we've got to get on to the next topics. Or any final quick remarks on this? Okay, very good. Let's move on to item 8, and that's Greg, the Neighborhood Resilience Team's information. Go ahead, Greg.
I think what I was primarily interested in is seeing like whether the Sustainability Advisory Board is really kind of interested. We haven't had a conversation about whether you're interested in taking this on as an initiative that we would like to pursue. Like I'll be presenting the idea at my presentation at the educational offering next month, and I'll be talking with folks at the Neighborhood Association President's Meeting, and I'll be talking tomorrow with Doug Erickson just to see about connecting up with other civic organizations. But I wanted to at least have a conversation with the rest of the SAB about whether or not this is something that as a group we're interested in pursuing. And I sent out the paper that I'd written about it last month, and I invited people to read it, but I don't know whether folks have actually had a chance to do so.
I read it today.
Yeah. Well, me personally, I am very excited about this topic, and I think the SAB has established its series of educational seminars, which I think is going to be a good basis to help get this information out. And that's why I strongly requested that the city council attend your session, because the Map Your Neighborhood organization, I think it's great, and it ties in directly. And I think this is something that initially there's no outlay of money, just the SAB, I think, is instrumental in getting information out there. And I can foresee, as Greg has proposed, future presentations that get a little deeper into this. And Jerry, I was wondering, do you have a date on when the new hire, the emergency services director, is going to be coming on board?
I do not have a date.
Do you have a date?
We haven't done interviews.
Oh, no interviews yet.
Right.
You have applicants though, right? Okay. That's obviously that's going to be tied to that person very well. So I for one think it's something that we can continue to pursue without a great amount of effort and with no expenditure of money. So that's my opinion. So silence befell the barroom.
Yeah, I'm also very much in favor of continuing to pursue this. I'd certainly be interested to see what the neighborhood association chairs have to say.
Yeah.
But I just, in the course of the events that came upon us in this past year, I saw instances where a little bit more organization ahead of time would have been really beneficial. During the ice storm, people were sharing food and cooking for each other. For people who still had gas service at their house. Yeah, the benefits are quite obvious, but when you live in what has been such a stable environment, you don't really see the need for them, and people aren't really incentivized to develop these things proactively. But now that we've had some of these more shocking events over the preceding 2 years or so, I think there may be a greater appetite for this sort of organizational push, and I'd be grateful to see a ton of people show up for these kinds of sessions. I know that our educational series have not always been well attended, but I'm hoping this one would be, and would certainly appreciate the city doing what they can to advertise this as much as possible. I know we've had good attendance for the fruit tree session. Hopefully we can get something on par with that for this month's or this coming month's presentation as well.
So isn't the Old Time Fair going to happen this year? What if the SAB in cahoots with the city and the Map Your Neighborhood program and this effort had a booth with all sorts of information at the fair?
It'd be interesting. Yeah.
SAB had a booth a few years ago, which we had electric bicycles there and information about all things sustainable, and I think it was worth the while. So I'll just toss that out there, chew on it for a while, see what you think.
What is the fair?
It's Old Time Fair and Parade. Is that in July, Jerry? Do you remember?
Mid-July.
Yeah, mid-July.
Yeah.
And I think even though we are aligned with the city, if we wanted to get involved in that, we have to apply for a booth or a space. So it's something that we should think about and maybe, make a decision, I would think, by April meeting.
Okay.
So just a thought. It's more exposure, it's one more piece of marketing.
Right.
And I really think this topic is extremely important. It's a Boy Scout, Girl Scout topic, It's better to not need it and have it than to not have it and need it. So. Okay, anything else, Greg, you want to mention?
The only other thing was that part of the session that I've got in April will be devoted to just getting feedback from the folks who are listening in about their ideas about how to move forward with an initiative like this. So I'll essentially be presenting it as a possibility and a way to build upon the Mapping Your Neighborhood effort that already has taken place, but then really look at how it might be possible to bring it to more neighborhoods.
I think that's a great idea, Greg, to find out after your presentation what things interest people that they may want to learn more about or find out more about. Could help map future sessions.
Right.
Greg,
Okay.
have you invited Doug from the library? Because this is his thing too.
No, I'm going to be talking with him tomorrow morning at 9.
You're
I've
such a
already sent him the
trailblazer.
presentation and
Okay.
the PowerPoint, so he's seen it.
He's Greg on the spot. Boy. Okay, any comments on Greg's presentation or topic or neighborhood resilience teams?
Good. Thanks for the feedback. I'll keep you posted.
Okay, thanks for working on that, Greg. Really appreciate it. We have item 9 is website updates, and boy, I've been sending information to the new lady. What is her name, Jerry, who handles the website now?
Danielle?
Danielle, yeah, Danielle. She seems to be very sharp. She's gotten some things done, but the thing is, a part of our marketing, which we need to be in everybody's face all the time, and that's why, and Kim has harped on this before, the city needs to be advertising and promoting what it has done in the areas of sustainability. And you all know, in this day and age, marketing has to be nonstop, constant. It has to be in people's face. And our website has gotten much better, but there's always little updates that need to be done to the website, minor things, but it helps keep it accurate and timely. If people go there and it's out of date, they don't go there again. So I think we need somebody in our group who can be responsible for getting any little updates and additions and corrections to the new lady who does the website. So I'm wondering if anybody would like to volunteer to do that. I doubt it's going to take much time, but it just, we could all send information to that one person so that they can give it. Who is it, Jerry? Naomi?
Danielle.
Danielle. God, what is it? Danielle. So if there are no volunteers now, we'll, harp on this again, but I do think it's important to make sure our website is up to date.
I can try to fit it in, Jerry.
Can you really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
That means folks send me the information and then I just basically transfer it to Danielle.
exactly. We need just one person to be the conduit to Danielle. And if I know Mike has seen things and had ideas about the website. And if you see any little mistakes, anything, get them to Greg, and then Greg will funnel them to Danielle. And we'll get you Danielle's email too, Greg.
Good, thanks.
Great, I appreciate it. Okay, Jerry, staff liaison update. Got anything else you want to add to the good of the cause?
Not tonight. I'm happy to send an email to the entire group with other things that we've been working on. I've got too many things in my inbox, but I'll send something to the entire SAB.
Okay. Very good. Kim, do you have a kind of a review of action items? Who's doing what?
Embedded is this big melange of notes.
Yeah, that's all right. If you can't sift them out, we'll get them done. But so one of the things still to be done, and that's the October Ed session that Michael will be working on eventually. Charity, that's still to be done, working on November speaker. You and me, Kim, I guess we just need to thrash out the people who are going to be electric future presenters. We probably got that done, but and Darren is going to be back in April, and
I invited Westland Refuse to April. I
okay,
have not
very
heard
good.
back yet.
You invited them, but they just haven't got back yet. Is there? Okay. Okay, good. And Greg's volunteered to be our website go-to guy.
And I'll get in touch with the neighborhood association about the April meeting.
That's right. That's right. Very good. Thank you.
I'm going to add on there. Go ahead, Victoria.
Finish, and then I have a question that may not apply.
If it's okay with you, Terry, I think we need to get together and distill what Darren gave us, this wonderful list he gave us last night, so we can just make it super simple of, hey, this is code, this is incentive, this is, there's a lot of other in here and there's a little bit of CDC, but so that we're clear on it.
Yeah,
And so that we'll get that sent out so everybody can then prioritize before the next meeting of what things that you see as, that you want to start with.
we can do that. I feel a beer coming on.
It doesn't have to be green. We can do it not to.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, Victoria,
Victoria, yes.
I was a couple minutes late. I don't know if the question has come up that if the city's going to take over, if the city is going to take over Oppenlander, does our group have anything to do with seeing that that property is, whatever's done with it is something sustainable?
yeah, that is definitely a large topic, which Victoria, after my communication with you, how I feel about that. So that may be something if the group wants to add a few minutes to next meeting's agenda, or at least hash it amongst ourselves.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, because that is a 10-acre opportunity for something right there. Mhm.
It's a 10-acre discussion.
Yep, exactly. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay.
Okay. Darren, you just hung around the whole time. Boy, what a guy. Appreciate it. So
Yeah,
any last
yeah.
comments or questions from the crew?
We could take Darren out for a beer.
We could, by golly, we just tap into his brain.
So I do have an update for you.
Oh, all
In
right.
case anyone doesn't pay attention to planning. But so there was a food cart proposal for the old Willamette gas station.
Yeah, Willamette
Went
Garage.
through the Historic Review Board and went through the Planning Commission last night and was approved. So we will have our first food cart pod. They're proposing to open in June, the food carts, and then the indoor pub in sometime midsummer. So it's pretty exciting news.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what Willamette needs, is another bar.
There's parking anyway.
Yeah, real. Okay, great. Well, thanks for that. That was the most important bit of news all night, Darren.